Hey guys, hope everyone's having a good day. Is ready for another episode in the series we like to call Underrated Throwers. Now today we got a special one. We got Igor Astapkovich. I said that totally wrong. He's a Belarusian thrower and a Soviet Union thrower, and then once the Soviet Union fell, represented Belarus. He's a hammer thrower. He's like a 82, 83 meter hammer thrower, one of the most decorated hammer throwers ever. Competed in a very, very stacked era against a plethora of 80-meter hammer throwers. Absolute legends of the sport. And he's a medalist in the Olympics, I think twice over. Couple times medalist in the World Championships, a couple time medalist in the European Championships. I'll link all his accomplishments, his height, weight, with I think from memory he's like 6'4", 265, and his like notable accomplishments, his personal best, all that in the video description. But I think he's very underrated because I don't think a lot of people know who he is, and I don't know if that's just because they can't pronounce his name like me or something, so they just don't bring him up because they're scared to look like idiots or something, just saying names wrong, or they just truly don't know who he is. And part of this series is to educate, especially the newer generation of throwers, about throwers that I think the majority of the throwing community don't know, unless you're a nerd like me. So I think he has very good technique, is a pretty good technical model, and is very simple technique, but is very effective and uses his body very well. Alright, so we'll get into it. This is just a training throw that he has. So he's obviously not going very full speed or anything, so we'll watch that again. So you'll notice right off the bat he has a very steep wind and a very, very high first turn, which you don't really see. Sometimes you see people have very high first turns in terms of the high point, but really only Kibway Johnson is the only other person I think who has this high of a high point on their first turn, because generally four turners tend to have a little flatter orbit and then build it, but his orbit is crazy, and you can just tell in the winds, because usually four turners tend to wind a little bit flatter, but he lets the hammer drop. Well, not drop, but get a lot lower. So, and you also notice on his winds, he doesn't just drop it. So he doesn't just drop it. He reaches out. He reaches out over here, which is very good because that establishes a good counter and establishes a good long path of the hammer. And I don't recommend beginners winding with such a steep angle because it's very hard to counter. But in theory, if you can counter it, it can lead to better throws. It can lead to further throws because you're letting gravity help you wind instead of a lot of your muscles wind. So when you have a steeper orbit, if you can handle it's great because you're allowing gravity to help you help it pendulum down a lot more rather than relying a lot more on your physicality. So like Koji Murafushi uses this to a great advantage as well. So, and you tend to see a lot of far hammer throwers tend to have a little steeper of wind than most. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, these are like 80+ meter hammer throwers. So, I mean, they've been doing this for years. I would not recommend a beginner winding with this because it's very easy to just drop and just lose tension in the hammer if you just wind super steep like this. So it's very, very important that if you wind steep like this, you wind out. I mean, you should wind out regardless, but it's out All right, don't think about up and down. Think about around, out and around. That's what you want to think of. All right. So he's here. And for the rest of the video, I'm just gonna either refer to him as Igor, because I'm not even gonna attempt to say his last name. Because he'd probably spend 20 minutes for me just to break down how to pronounce his name for me, because I'm very illiterate, I guess. So, but he's very great here, and I really like this style of hammer, where you notice that he's not turning with the hammer, he's letting the hammer pass him, and you notice that his foot doesn't turn until the hammer really gets here, his right foot, I mean, and he's not turning his left foot in front of the hammer as well. So he's doing a great job of staying grounded. The key to throwing hammer far is you want to stay grounded as long as possible. Now you tend to see like professional throwers and stuff, like Olympic level throwers, and it looks like they're picking up their feet really fast. But the thing is, when you're moving at these kind of speeds, they're staying grounded for as long as they possibly can be. But when the hammer is moving at these kind of speeds, to be throwing like 80 plus or 70 plus meters, and you'll see as he goes through the throw, as he starts picking up speed, that his right foot will start picking up a little bit. But it's also important to notice that when these throwers do this, that they still let the hammer pass them. All right, it's just that they're at such speeds that the right foot just picks up earlier, just because you're just moving faster. But it's important to also remember that you want to move the hammer fast, not you. So you notice that he's not moving that fast compared to the hammer. All right. So I'll play this full speed so you get a good picture of that. So you notice how the hammer's moving really fast. It's like a blur. And I know that's also because of the quality of this video. But he's always in clear view. All right, so that's another thing to look for. If you're moving as fast as the hammer, that's not a good thing. All right, it's not a good thing at all. That just means you're turning with the hammer, and yeah, it looks very, very pretty and stuff. Like, it looks aesthetically correct, but you're not really producing any force. So you really want to, once you're here, let the hammer pass and push. And you notice how he's pushing with his whole right side. And a thing I learned recently is, you notice with a lot of elite hammer throwers, they think about pushing their elbows together. And what this does is it really tenses up their chest and forces their arms to get long. All right? So it forces them to reach, and it forces them not to break posture. So it forces their arms not to move up and down, and it makes it a lot harder to pull, but it makes it a lot easier to push. So that's something to keep in mind. So you notice as he's winding, his elbows are very close together, and that's the way to establish that. So you want to wind with your elbows together. All right, and then just keep that kind of tension with kind of pulling your elbows together when you throw. All right, and that's a great way not to lose, it's a great way to keep your arms longer throughout the throw, and to keep the correct amount of tension, and it forces you not to think about pulling back or pulling with this left shoulder. It kind of locks your upper body in place, and is a much more stable platform to push the hammer. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So he's here, and a good rule of thumb also on the feet thing is really never think about turning your feet ever in hammer. The feet will just naturally just turn, and your body will just turn naturally if you're moving the hammer. If you move the hammer and keep pushing and accelerating the hammer, your feet will just move. All right, so he's right now actively not thinking about turning this right foot. You'll notice how the right foot picks up and starts turning when the hammer is at 90. And by 90, I mean just straight out here. So if 0 is right here, this is 90, that's 180, that's 270 or something. I'm also not great with math. Um, but yeah, really nice high point here. And again, pretty high. But you notice the acceleration he gets from the downward swing because he's letting gravity help him go down, which makes it a lot easier for it to start the orbit. All right. So, but he does a really excellent job of countering right here. And you notice, so he's here, and instead of turning his right foot, he plants his feet and sits back. And what I mean by sit back is if you think about, like, you're going to be in like a quarter squat, or like you're squatting, and then you kind of feel like you're walking backwards. All right. So it's almost, if you didn't have a hammer, he would fall backwards. That's the kind of tension you need. But it's not falling backwards like with your shoulders. It's a sit, like you're going to sit in a chair. It's going to feel kind of like if you're sitting in a chair and then someone like pulls the chair under you and you would fall. That's what it should feel like. All right? Or another way to think about it is you're walking backwards. So if you were a good drill to feel this is if you wind, and then just walk backwards. And then walk forwards, and then walk backwards. And then another thing that can help you feel this kind of thing is if you grab a really heavy sled and you have like the ropes and stuff, and you sit back against it, like you're in this kind of position right here that he's in. All right? And you just walk backwards on like the track or something. And you just keep the same posture, and you feel the weight in your heels, and you feel your body weight going backwards, and that's what you want to feel while your arms are still staying long. So that's what you want to feel right here. So you notice here, and then sits back, and then as he continues to go, he's going to sit back a lot more. So you notice right here, there, he's here, and then sits back. In the sit back, when you sit back while keeping your arms longer, that really speeds up this. All right, so let me play a turn in slow motion so you kind of get what I'm saying. So he's here, and then you see he sits back, and you see how that really accelerates the hammer right there in that little short time. That's kind of what you want to feel. All right, and I really want to talk about also the last turn, because I don't think a lot of people talk about the last turn enough in hammer in terms of the going to 3 to 4, the third turn to the fourth turn in the actual transition. What people need to understand is that when you get to your fourth turn, you want to feel like you're slowing down, like your body is slowing down, but not the hammer. And it's a very weird concept, but you notice in a lot of elite hammer throwers, so let's see, where's his last turn? Okay, that's his last turn. So he's here, and he's here, and you notice how he gets longer. He allows the hammer to get a lot longer compared to his other turns. All right, like there's a significant difference. So he's here, and he lands a little later. Oh, sorry, wait, oops. Okay, this is fourth turn. Okay, sorry, I was on the wrong turn. So he's here, all right, and then he allows the hammer to get a lot longer, all right. So let me see. So let's see if we can see that. Let me back this up a little. I want you to pay attention to the difference between his third turn and his fourth turn. So you notice on his third turn, he's just building, and then his fourth turn, he kind of stalls his right foot a little. Don't do that. He doesn't stall his right foot, but he lands, and then he reaches a lot longer while still holding a counter. He lets the hammer go a lot longer, so that slows your body down, but it dramatically speeds up the hammer and increases your radius. And I know you can't really see the hammer here, but he reaches a lot longer. All right, so let's see. You can tell by here. So let's see. Right. Let me see. Okay. Right here is his third turn. All right. Well, actually, it goes the same direction. Yeah. So it's here that it gets longer. It's hard to tell with this kind of quality of video because this was recorded, I think, in like the 90s or something. So, but if you really see it a lot more in, you can really see it a lot more in like Fast Check or something, like things recorded past like 2010, where the quality is like actually good and you can kind of see what the hammer's doing. So you're just gonna have to trust me on this, all right? And if you want to fact check me, then look at more modern videos of throwers because they all do this. So, and that's a little more of a, like, an advanced thing, and that's just something that kind of just happens because you're just building a radius. But you'll see like a noticeable change in speed between the actual body. So it's very important to note that the hammer doesn't slow down. You never want to decelerate the hammer. It's just a natural thing that will happen. So that's something to keep in mind. So to reiterate, your body will slow down just a little bit, not by much, but it will slow down enough for you, if you're watching it on video, to notice, or if you're watching it in person, to notice. All right, so that's something to keep in mind. All right, because when that happens, when you slow down your body a little, it's gonna really accelerate that hammer a lot more and make it a lot longer, which makes you a lot more balanced on the finish, like he is right here. All right, but it's very important to also not lose your counter. So you don't want to think about reaching forward, all right, and like with like your upper body. All right, you want to just think about letting your shoulders get a little longer. All right, a little longer. Like right here. You notice how his shoulders are a lot longer here compared to when he's actually turning. So this is his third turn. And he's not as long here. But then on his fourth turn, he's really long and he really sits back. So that's the kind of motion you want to see. And again, this is like a more advanced thing to like get you that extra distance. If you're starting to throw like 60 plus meters and stuff, then maybe start concentrating on this kind of stuff. This is just a little more of an advanced thing. But again, it's hard to tell with this kind of video quality. So, but he is doing it. So you can really see it on the shoulders from his third turn. So he's here and his shoulders are there. But then you notice on his fourth turn, his head is back here and his arms are longer out here. All right, so you can really see the difference there. And you could just see the stretch right here that he's not getting in his other turns. All right, so that's kind of the feelings you want to have. But yeah, other than that, I just think he's very just underrated because I just don't think a lot of people know who he is, and I think he's a thrower that deserves the respect that he gets, and I think deserves a lot more respect because, yeah, I just think he's just a very just quality thrower, just amazing technique, amazing balance. I know there's a training throw, so he's also not going full speed. But yeah, and I think he does a great job in illustrating how you should throw the hammer, and the hammer should move, and how your body should act in relation to the hammer. So yeah, I think he's a really good technical model. So yeah, I wish I could pronounce his name, but other than that, I hope you guys learned something. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments or anything, and have a good day.